shared value. Sanja, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Marina. Thank you all. It's my pleasure to be in such a great company and to learn a lot of new information and a lot of wisdom with a good faith that we will overcome this crisis as well, because there is a lot of knowledge and there is a lot of passion. I'm fully aware of the time and that we are supposed to be finished finalizing at 5. So I will try to merge to shorten the presentation. But before going into the details, let me shortly present our current work. Some of you know, but it's good to remind that UNICEF in Bulgaria is working on a 5 years based programming agreement. We are now in the middle of this program. We have signed with the government the program that will last and will end at the end of 2022. Of course, we are now readjusting, reprogramming, because the crisis will have impact also on our intervention. UNICEF, as you know, is guided by the Convention on the Rights of the Child, and our vision, our mandate is to protect the most vulnerable children and families. And obviously, this crisis will make the already vulnerable and those who are at margins of the society to even be more exposed to shocks, to economic shocks, but any other type of abuse. Our program is covering early childhood development and child care, inclusive education and early learning, protection of children from violence, abuse and exploitation, and ensuring that children who are in contact with the law have access to justice, as well as more broad and overarching component of our program that is kind of chapeau for everything that we do is a partnership for child rights. Zooming in Bulgaria and data, as we know, Bulgaria is a middle-income country, upper middle-income country, and member of the EU since 2007. Without even before the COVID, before this pandemic and crisis, it is the European country with the lowest indicator, some of the lowest indicator in all Europe. For example, around 4.2% of children that are school-age children are out of education system. Yearly, we have so far we have 20,000 children and youth who have dropped from education or left school early. We have 22% or around 168,000 of youth from 15 to 24 age that are not in education system or any employment scheme or any training, and we have around 30% of women who during their pregnancy they didn't have access to the services because they don't have health insurance. So all of it to say that our focus in programming is always to reach the most vulnerable communities, the more vulnerable families, and the most vulnerable children. When it comes to corporate social responsibility and engagement of UNICEF with the business, this is not a new area for us globally, but this is not a new area for Bulgaria as well. And why corporate social responsibility? Because in UNICEF we do acknowledge that business has the obligation to have obligation to respond to the rights and the needs of duty bearers, and the children and their families are recognized as a duty bearers. On the screen you see what is the kind of definition of corporate social responsibility and what impact this business can have on society in impact on life of children. If we go on the next slide, which tell us about sustainable developmental goals, as you know, our agenda is developmental agenda, the respect, promotion and and realization of the rights is developmental agenda as well as engagement with the business. As a UN organization, we are focused on helping the governments and civil society in achieving sustainable development goals. And this is something that is concrete and tangible and focused on people, planet, and prosperity. So this COVID crisis and this pandemic has brought some new reflection of engagement, not only UNICEF, but all those responsible for who have something to contribute and to protect the people, the rights of the people, the rights of children, the well-being of people, but also well-being of planet, and to ensure sustainable and equitable prosperity. I'm not going to go through the 17 goals of the SDGs, more than 160 targets or 230 indicators. What I would like to reflect on sustainable developmental goals and the business. So here on the slide you have few points, but what I would like to, I'm not going to read, you have it on the slide, but what I would like to emphasize that for UNICEF, as I mentioned, the business for result is not a new thing. It's the integrated and shared strategic engagement with UNICEF, of UNICEF with the business. So what we would like now at this point, and especially triggered with this crisis, to consolidate our report so far, our achievement in this area, and to really select the areas where we can contribute the most together with business. I'm not going to explain the drivers of the business in this forum. I think there is not necessarily at this point. This might be a separate discussion for one of the next hour meetings, but I would like to say that UNICEF is analyzing all drivers of business, and where our interest intersects, there is always a good entry point for long-term engagement. What we are the most interested, of course, is the respect, promotion, and realization of rights that are linked with sustainability. If we go on the next slide, I'm pleased to learn actually and to say that Bulgaria is doing well when it comes to the social business, social corporate responsibilities. These are some highlights of analysis at a glance, that we have in the country more than 500 corporate social responsibility good practices. We have more than half multiple partnership across the country in 27 municipalities. And if you analyze where the business in Bulgaria was most interested to contribute to the rights and achievement of sustainable developmental goals, you can see that this is the quality education, the reaching quality education. Then we have good health and well-being, and the rest is divided between addressing the poverty, including child poverty, well-being of the land, life on the land, on the planet, and some of them, small percentages, also related to the Goal 16, which is peace, justice, and strong institutions. So you can see that as DGs for business, and it's not new in Bulgaria, we have already a good base to build on it. So this is the point, that our engagement with the business in Bulgaria is not starting from the scratch. We have a very good base to build on it. However, on the next slide, you will see actually it is not the next slide, one of the, but I'm here referring to the appeal of our UN Secretary General, who simply said one obvious thing that we all know, but his appeal has a different weight, that no one cannot can do everything by themselves, and in UN we have a really good base to call for a partnership with everyone who has space and tools to be engaged in the promotion, realization and implementation of the rights of human rights, including children's rights. As I mentioned earlier, and you can see on the next slide, current context in Bulgaria is good. We have experience when it comes to the corporate social responsibility over the last 10 years. This is the area that is growing exponentially and rapidly, but still when we compare ourselves in Bulgaria with the rest of the Europe, with other European countries, we are still behind. So we have some also a lot of work to do to be at the level of other European countries. The concept of corporate social responsibility was not a concept that was introduced from abroad. This is the concept that it was developed and internalized with the efforts of the various local and committed businesses. So this is something that Bulgaria is has contextualized and will further contextualize in order to reach the level of other European countries. And in last year, before the crisis, the government has initiated creation of national Bulgaria 2030 developmental strategy, and this year was supposed to be the first voluntary national review on the SDGs on Bulgaria. I do hope that this crisis will maybe just postpone the timing of the reporting and some dynamics, but I do strongly believe that Bulgaria will remain committed to this. On the next slide, this is what we like to say our famous will of the shared value partnership, and as I briefly touch upon in the beginning of the presentation, that we are very interested and to further engage with the business, and not only looking for financial contributions, but we are very much interested in merging with the business operations, with the skills, with the assets and know-how of the business, and where we can all identify the areas where we can commit further and deliver results for children in order to achieve SDGs or become closer to the achievement of SDGs. If you look at the wheel, you will see that this wheel is showing the range of engagement opportunities for UNICEF that we can explore together with the business. With the business partner, industry leaders, multi-stakeholders, platform, financial platform of non-financial platforms, and this is organized in 4 groups. The first is advocacy, that this engagement with the business will help amplifying the voice of UNICEF as a mandated to promote and to help in realization of child rights. Financing, as it could be strategic partnership and strategic grant in one of the UNICEF program. And during this crisis, I was very pleased together with the whole team of UNICEF to see what is the commitment of business and contribution of especially in-kind contribution in order to cover the needs and of the most vulnerable communities, and in order to help the children to attend distance education in the cases where the families were not able to provide for internet or IT equipment. So this crisis really demonstrated and keep demonstrating a good commitment and partnership of UNICEF and business, in particularly in this component of this will. Then, as I said, there is a third, which is core business and assets, and this is, for example, it's the typical example of this partnership is delivery of the vaccine, when UNICEF is bringing the health expertise and business is bringing assets in providing goods and services to vaccinate, to immunize children. And then the fourth one is the business practices, where we together with business community, UNICEF usually can influence the market and shape the market and have really direct or indirect impact on life of the most vulnerable children and families. If we go to the next slide, there are two slides actually that are not from Bulgaria. We will soon have our own slides, because what we did, these are the slides that our colleagues from Serbia did it a few months before us. They use this wheel that you've seen in the previous slide and analyze the environment in Serbia, economic environment in Serbia and the system in Serbia, and analyze where they can partner with the business within these four categories. We also in Bulgaria, we recently finalized, we call it situation analysis on business for children here in, and hopefully we will be able to soon to present concrete findings. But this was extracted just to illustrate, for example, and I'm pleased that some of the previous participants, they talked about immense impact of ICT and digitalization in the life of people. So as you can see, I'm not going through details of these slides. So first, what they did in Serbia, and we also did here in Bulgaria, they analyzed how the ICT have what is the impact on markets, on social community and procurement chain, because business also within the chain of supply has responsibility to protect and to comply with the respect of child rights. If you go on the and these are impacts are obvious, you know, these are the, for example, if we analyze in this crisis of COVID related crisis in Bulgaria, UNICEF was able to deliver equipment to the most vulnerable communities for them, for their children to be able to attend education online and distance education. So this is directly impact on realization of child rights, rights to education. If you go on the next slide, if you look on the next slide, the impacts are not always positive, and especially when it comes to the ICT. Of course, there is always risks that if we know, we are able to address it and manage. The most obvious risk when it comes to the ICT industry and children is the risk of inappropriate content and risk of safety. Children are more exposed to online inappropriate content, but also they are most vulnerable to the online predators, and they are more vulnerable and exposed to the risk of abuse. However, creating the shared value, and this we have on the last slide of this presentation, by analyzing the risks and impacts, we are able to calculate that actually the impact of the ICT in realization of child rights is much bigger in terms of advocacy and spreading the positive messages, spreading the good messages, calling for the respect of child rights, showing, demonstrating good business practices, introducing the channel for strategic partnership, financial partnership, and promoting core business, then if we have this good analysis, we are able to calculate the risk and manage risks together, particularly when it comes to the ICT sector and UNICEF. To finalize the presentation, and I ran through the slides for the sake of time and maybe to leave more time for actual discussion and engagement, what was the key message of this presentation? That there are three key messages. The first of all, I wanted to present what does UNICEF consider as a shared value and how we will create more shared value partnership here in Bulgaria. We do have global shared value partnership. We do have in Bulgaria shared value partnership, but the COVID-related crisis also gave us a good entry points to build on existing partnership and accelerate and strengthen existing, and to bring more partnership into life for the realization of child rights. And the second, wanted to highlight that not always the risks that are obvious, because the first thing when it comes to the ICTs and children, as a humans, we tend to indicate the risk, the negative side. But if we calculate these risks can be managed, because the bigger gain is on the opportunities and advantage that ICT sector can bring to the child rights. And the third, my final message is that pandemic has a big impact on the vulnerabilities we heard on the economy and on vulnerabilities, but also this is an excellent opportunity to bring together the business and UNICEF and to commit to do and deliver really good results for children in order to be closer to the reaching of the SDGs. Thank you, SDGs. Thank you very much. I'm stopping here, and I'm very happy to engage further in the discussion. Over.